Well, I think the first thing to say is how much people are clearly, glad to be back in real life, and we're finding out that we've all got legs, and we're having to dress the bottom half as well as the top half, which actually makes quite a nice change. So that's really come through. But as far as some of the messages, I mean, I was chairing the headline stage yesterday at Retail Technology Show, and we had the likes of Mike Coop. If you could imagine, the biggest juxtaposition. On the one hand, I was chatting with Mike Coop, and then a few hours later, I was chatting to Tiny Temper. I mean, but really both were absolutely fascinating. So the one thing that I took from much of certainly what Mike and some of the other speakers were talking about was it's so uncertain. So in other words, we're coming out of a pandemic, and so we thought that we'd probably be able to gauge consumer behaviour. And then what happened? We got the cost of living crisis. Now, on the train coming up here this morning, I read in the newspaper that something like 59%, I can't remember the poll, but 59% of the population, it seems, are cutting back on essentials. So it's really starting to happen, and that's going to have a big impact on retail, particularly grocery. So that was one thing that came through. Another one, which is fascinating, Morrison spoke about sustainability, and I always thought that sustainability was use less plastic, drive an electric car, don't have plastic straws, etc., etc. Actually, what Hannah spoke about was something far broader, that it's about social responsibility and purpose of your brand and what your brand stands for and all those sorts of things. So fascinating. And interestingly, the room was packed for that session, which I think is a great sign that people are interested in that. I mentioned Tiny Temper and some of the things we talked about. That was actually a session with the founder of a company, Sam Jones, founder of a company called Generate. And what they do is it's all about cookies, and it's absolutely fascinating. Whenever we click on you accept cookies on any website, it's going to dozens, probably hundreds of third-party agencies and so on and so forth, who are then going to sell our personal data. What he's saying is, no, we should be able to ourselves monetize our personal data or donate it to charity. Really interesting. So that's a little bit of a micro trend. But the other kind of major one was all about the physical and the virtual, the physical and the digital, online and the store, all that, and the merging of the two, which I think is a really interesting subject. It's one that consumers want. It's something that they expect more and more, because we expect so much of retailers. And people who know me, that they know, for example, that I've never been a fan of the term omnichannel, and I think that's probably, it's even less relevant now, and we need to come up, well, we don't need to come up with a new term, because we know what we're talking about. It is that merging of the two, because as consumers, as shoppers, we just shop. We shop. We don't shop in channels. We don't think, when I pick up my smartphone, oh, I'm now shopping on my smartphone. We don't think like that at all. So that was one of the other trends that came through. Yeah. Well, one thing it won't be is in the metaverse. Now, people might think, well, what's he on about? Of course, it's going to be. There's so much talked about that. But and the reason why I say that, all joking aside, is that by definition, retail is a human interaction. It's a personal thing. I'll give you a case in point. I was at Shop Talk in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, and it seemed that almost every other session was talking about the metaverse, but at the same time, everybody there, like here, was saying how wonderful it was to get back in person. So you think, well, come on, you can't have it both ways. So I think that one of the things I hope is that the whole customer experience around personalisation is actually going to be personal. So I gave an example yesterday when I was speaking. There's a well-known, very large marketplace who I do use, and I'll say this, the reason why I do is it just works, so full marks to them. However, they will insist on addressing me in their email communication as Hi A. And they know my name, they know my credit card details, they know my address, they know my preferences. You know, what's wrong with calling me Andrew, for goodness sake? So yeah, personalisation, I think it really will be. And actually there's something that was very interesting that Mike Coop said. He felt that what we're going to see happen over the next few years is that retailers really will predict what we need. Now, some people might say, well, that's a bit spooky, but actually I think that if it's done the right way, in other words, use data intelligently, and I still don't think we're there yet. Retail as an industry has got so much data, it probably doesn't know, it's swimming in data, it doesn't know what to do with it. Or rather, that's wrong, it does know what to do with it, but it's not able to. It's not able to analyse it, interrogate it, and properly interpret it, and then use it to deliver value back to the consumer. Well, I think over the course of the next 8 years, to 2030, we're going to see that mature. And as it does, and as new examples of that occur, we're going to expect more and more, which is then going to drive it. So it'll become almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that it matures. Now that's really exciting, and that also, so that's inventory management, that's demand management, that's supply chain, that's last mile fulfillment, all of those things which we're going to see massive improvements in. But at the same time, it's going to be more and more difficult for retailers, because we know, if we come back to 22, and it's probably going to last for a good few years, they've got rising costs, we've got rising, as consumers, we've got rising costs, so there are going to be some pinch points, and it's going to be really interesting to see how different retailers respond to that and how they support their customers.